Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because, well, we are going to unpack something truly fascinating. We're going to look at a phenomenon that explains why we sometimes just stop trying, even when incredible success or the exact thing we've been wanting is literally sitting right in front of us. It's this mental trap that almost all of us fall into without even realizing it's happening. You see, our brains are designed to protect us from pain, right? But sometimes that protection becomes the very thing holding us back. Let's break this down in simple words. Have you ever stopped trying because of a past failure? Really think back for a second. Maybe there was a project you pitched that got completely shut down, a skill you tried to learn but just couldn't kind of grasp at the time, or a personal goal you finally just threw your hands up and abandoned. We've all been there for sure. But what if the only thing stopping you from succeeding today isn't a lack of ability, but the lingering ghost of that past failure? What if you're being blocked by a barrier that no longer even exists? Section 1. The invisible glass barrier. To understand how these invisible barriers work, let's look at a really fascinating experiment involving a predatory fish called a Northern Pike. Researchers took this pike and placed it into a large aquarium. Then they lowered a clear glass divider right down the middle. On the other side of that invisible glass, they placed a school of minnows, which, it turns out, is the pike's absolute favorite food. So step 1 is the effort. The pike sees the minnows, gets hungry, and strikes. But bam, it hits its nose hard against the glass divider. Ouch, right? It hurts, but the fish is hungry, so it tries again. Bam, another strike, another painful collision with the invisible wall. This leads directly to step 2, which is the conditioning. After dozens and dozens of painful attempts, the fish eventually just gives up. It stops trying. It retreats to its side of the tank. In very simple words, the fish's brain has actually rewired itself to survive. It has learned that reaching the food is totally impossible and trying only brings pain. And here is where we reach the third stage and the absolute kicker of this experiment. The researchers reach into the tank and they completely pull out the glass divider. The barrier is gone. The minnows happily swim over to the other side, swimming literally right in front of the pike's face. But what does the pike do? Absolutely nothing. No way. The fish has become so deeply conditioned to believe that the barrier is there that it doesn't even try to take a single bite. The pike literally starves to death in the midst of plenty. The food is practically touching its mouth, but the belief in the barrier is way stronger than its instinct to survive. Section 2. What is Pike Syndrome? It's a pretty sad story for the fish, right? But you know what? Human beings do this exact same thing all the time. While Pike syndrome isn't a formal medical diagnosis, it perfectly illustrates a psychological concept called learned helplessness. Now, what's really interesting about this is how perfectly the fish's conditioning maps to human behavior. In simple terms, this is what happens when you experience negative situations that you feel you just can't control. Over time, your brain decides it's safer to just give up trying to change things. Even when you finally do have the power to change them, you basically build a mental prison for yourself. Just like the fish, your past failures convince you that your future potential is capped. You stop striking at the minnows. Section 3. The cost of assumed limitations. So what is the real-world cost of living inside this mental prison? How does this invisible glass hold us back in our careers, our relationships, and our own personal growth? Well, first off, it creates massive mental barriers. Notice that it's not the actual struggle stopping you today, it's the memory of it. Imagine, say, you tried to launch a business 5 years ago and failed miserably because the technology just wasn't there yet. Today, the technology exists and is incredibly cheap. The glass barrier is gone. But if you suffer from Pike syndrome, you remain completely paralyzed. The mere memory of how hard it was and how much it really hurt to fail stops you from ever trying again. This leads us to assumed limitations. This is when you hardwire a belief into your very identity based on totally outdated information. You tell yourself, I'm not a math person, or I'm terrible at public speaking, or I'm just not capable of getting a promotion. But ask yourself, when did you actually collect the data that proved that? Was it a bad experience in high school? Was it one bad presentation 10 years ago? You're basing your current reality on old data. You're assuming the limitation is a permanent law of physics, when really it was just a temporary glass wall that might not even be there anymore. In a professional environment, this leads to widespread stagnation. Have you ever worked in an office where people just say, well, that's kind of how we've always done it, or where nobody ever suggests fresh ideas? Often, this is a team-wide Pike syndrome at play. Years ago, people might have suggested innovative ideas, but old leadership shot them down. They essentially hit their noses on the glass.
Now there's a brand new management team practically begging for innovation. The market has completely changed, the glass is totally gone, but the team stays quiet. The memory of previous rejections has completely killed their drive to innovate.
Section 4. How to shatter the glass. This is where we take our power back. If we are the ones who constructed this mental prison, well, we are also the ones with the keys to break out. Okay, let's dive into this. Our sources provide 3 wonderfully simple strategies to overcome this syndrome. Test the waters and shatter the glass. Question your no, conduct small trials, and seek fresh perspectives. Let's break these down one by one so you can start applying them immediately.
Strategy number 1, question your no. The next time an opportunity comes up and your brain instinctively shouts, "No, I can't do that," or "No, that's never going to work," I want you to hit pause. Interrogate that feeling. Ask yourself, is this no based on a verifiable, current fact right now in this exact moment, or is it just an emotional echo of a past failure? For example, if you want to ask for a raise and your brain says no, is it because your company is currently bankrupt, which is a fact, or is it because a completely different boss at a completely different company told you no 5 years ago? You have to separate the facts of today from the bruises of yesterday.
Strategy number 2 is incredibly practical. Small trials. You need to occasionally strike at the minnows again. You don't have to bet your life savings or quit your job to test if the glass is gone. Just test the boundary with a very small amount of effort. Pitch one small idea at the next meeting. Try doing one tiny task you previously thought you couldn't do. If you fail, if you hit the glass again, what have you really lost? Just a tiny bit of effort. But if the glass is gone, oh man, you've suddenly unlocked an entirely new world of success and potential. The risk is so low, but the reward is absolutely massive. And finally, strategy 3, seek fresh perspectives. Sometimes we're just way too close to our own history. We are too traumatized by the times we hit our nose on the glass to see things clearly. That's when you need to bring in someone from the outside, a mentor, a new colleague, maybe a friend. Find someone who wasn't there for your past failures, someone who never saw the glass in the first place. Because they don't have your baggage, they can look at the situation with fresh eyes and tell you, hey, the path is totally clear. Why aren't you swimming forward? They can see the minnows that you've trained yourself to ignore. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct, pretty provocative question. Where is the invisible glass in your own life? Think about your daily habits. Think about your workplace culture. Think about the dreams you quietly packed away in a box years ago. Are you holding yourself back because of a real obstacle? Or are you just paralyzed by the memory of one? It is time to test your boundaries. The glass might have been removed a long time ago, and your minnows are just waiting for you to strike. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I challenge you to go out there and shatter some glass.